You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to another crossover edition. This is Locked On Chiefs and Locked On Texans. We're going to be talking about this game with the Kansas City Chiefs going to Houston to take on this Texans team. First off, I do want to thank you for listening to Locked On Chiefs and Locked On Houston Texans and making us your first listen every day. We really do appreciate that. Don't forget, we're free and available on all platforms, including YouTube as well. I am Chris Clark. He is John Hickman of Locked On Texans, and we are going to be talking about this game today. And it looks like, actually, now that I say that, we are being joined by Mr. Ryan Tracy himself.
Is that Ryan?
That's Ryan. So, yeah,
just an artist formerly known as.
Wait a minute, I got so excited my camera dropped.
Ooh, that didn't scare
No
me.
worries. We are good. While you were doing that, Crossover Thursday is presented by our friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is so much fun, and it's easy to play. No competing with other players, just you versus the projections available. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projections, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. It can literally take less than 60 seconds to enter. It's that easy. We love Prize Picks, and we know you will too. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. All right, Ryan, since we were not expecting you to be here and you just decided to show up, I heard it pop in my ears, and I was like, no, wait a second. John, I will let you go ahead and go first. You're the host team in this game. What is the biggest storyline for the Houston Texans in this game?
Before I get to the storylines, Ryan, I just want to jump through this camera and give you a hug, man. Haven't seen you since we went to Alabama,
right,
for the Bowl. Great time, great opportunity to just kind of meet some of the guys. Me was probably one of the better meets of the trip, outside, of course, Dameon Pierce, who I had an opportunity to meet in Alabama. Bowl, which is leading me to the biggest storyline. Dameon Pierce, high ankle sprain. He will be out for the Houston Texans. And so we look at this team offensively, one of the worst, if not the worst offense in the league. I think there was a moment where the Jets were really, really bad and worse off than the Houston Texans whenever they had Zach Wilson as the starting quarterback. Things have changed a little bit with Mike White. But when we look at the Houston Texans, this team is orchestrated and centered around what they can and cannot do in the run game. Whenever they have the better drives that they've had this year, well, a lot of that was predicated around Dameon Pierce getting 4 to 5 yards per pop and moving those chains for the Houston Texans. He'll be out, could miss up to 3 weeks, which really sucks. He was one of the bright spots for this Houston Texans team, the only bright spot offensively outside of the bookend tackles in Laramie Tunsil and Titus Howard. And with Houston, releasing Benjamin, he's now signed to the Saints. All signs point to Rex Burkhead and Dare Ogunbowale from being Houston's top 2 options at running back. That's never a good option if those are your 2 options at the running back position. So I think that with the absence of Dameon Pierce, not only for Sunday's matchup, but throughout the season, and having guys as Houston's top 2 options, it's going to get ugly for this offense, not able to find scheme up ways to replicate what they're able to do in the run game whenever he's able to move the rock.
That's definitely going to be the hard part. It's something to watch, and you start talking about the running game with Houston and having questions at the quarterback position. I know you guys have moved quarterbacks a couple of times already this year. But not having the running game and having struggles at that position as well is going to be hard. Ryan, I'm going to defer to you on this one. What is the biggest storyline for the Chiefs that you see going into this week?
Yeah, the big thing is kind of going the opposite direction for the Chiefs roster because they're getting Kadarius Toney and McCole Hardman back, it looks like, out there at practice. So while the Texans have to base everything on the run game, which I really enjoyed, Dameon Pierce, one of my favorite guys in this last draft class. He's certainly really, really helped down in Houston. The opposite is kind of true for these 2 guys. two underachieving, like quick, one with straight line speed wide receivers they're going to add to the mix for Mahomes, but they haven't quite lived up to it. They haven't jumped on the scene. So can they do that? Is this a secondary that they can get after? Do they have to really get creative, or what does the game flow turn into? That's my big question is, how do you think, John, that really when you get all these weapons on the field, along with Juju Smith-Schuster and MVS and everybody else, how are they going to choose to defend them? Because this is something that can help these young guys get better.
Yeah, I think as much as we have not liked to see it this season, I think this may be an opportunity for Houston to really attack defensively by using that zone. I don't trust the man defense going up against a Patrick Mahomes when his weapons are Juju, Travis Kelce, Tony, who is a freak of an athlete, Pacheco, who you can move around, right? And then again, your quarterback is Patrick Mahomes. As of late, Houston's front four has been very effective. They've been able to move around Jalen Petrie, so he's been helping along that line of scrimmage. I'm okay with the zone in this game simply because it does allow Houston an opportunity to not get beat big on bigger plays, play maybe some of that bend, but don't break it. Maybe you can hold them if they drive all the way down, maybe go to 3 instead of 7. Game I saw them do it against the number 1 Dallas Cowboys when Dak is on the so. This is one of those games where, as much as we have hated to watch the cover 2, that type of defense for the Houston Texans, this is the perfect game for them.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how they defend this Chiefs offense. And we're going to talk a lot more about matchups when we get more into talking about this game. But I want to tell you about our friends over at Simply Safe. At Locked On Chiefs and Locked On Texans, we believe home should be where you and your family feel safest, especially over the holidays. This season, give yourself and your family the gift of peace and protection with the number 1 rated home security system, Simply Safe. And right now, Simply Safe is offering Locked On Chiefs and Locked On Texans listeners 40% off a new security system, but don't put this off. In an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology exclusively from Simply Safe to capture critical evidence and verify the threat is real, so you can get higher priority police response. With the top-rated Simply Safe app, stay in complete control of your system, arm or disarm, unlock for a guest, access your cameras, or adjust system settings anytime, anywhere. Cameras, break-in alarms with Windows. Simply Safe has it all covered. They can give you the one-stop shop for all of your home protection needs. Don't miss your chance to save on my favorite security system. Get 40% off any new system at simplysafe.com/LockedOnNFL today. That's simplysafe.com/LockedOnNFL. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Thank you for making Locked On Chiefs and Locked On Texans your first listen today. For the second listen today, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes and local experts with insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. All right, John, let's jump into the matchups because we've kind of already talked about it a little bit and teased it in the start. What is your favorite matchup for this game? What are you wanting to see the most?
Right now, it has to be like how good of football has Chris Jones been playing for the Chiefs?
It's pretty up there.
Yeah,
After
you're
good,
right?
Aaron Donald could feel him.
and Chris Jones is one of those defensive linemen where you can pretty much move him across that D line. He could be effective, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I look at matchups, a lot of times guys get excited about the cornerback wide receiver matchup, the quarterback versus. I'm looking at when and if they decide to move him around enough to where he's matched up with Titus Howard, or if he's matched up with Laremy Tunsil. By far, I think Laremy Tunsil is the best left tackle in the league this year. I'm not going overall, but this year has only allowed 1 sack and over 500 pass snapping opportunities. That's phenomenal for Laremy Tunsil and for any offensive lineman. So outside of that, not only am I looking at the tackles and whether or not they're going to have an impact on this game, they got to keep their quarterback, whether that's Davis Mills in the pocket, Jeff Driscoll in the pocket, they got to keep them upright. But also, How can the interior offensive line for the Houston Texans, which has struggled this year heavily, how will they bode well against the Kansas City Chiefs defensive front? So my first matchup that I really think folks need to look at comes in those trenches, man, because if Davis Mills doesn't get time or if Jeff Driscoll isn't allowed to hit the edge on some of those design run plays, then this offense, once again, I mean, we're going to end up looking like this because it's going to stink if they're not able to move the ball. On your side for the Kansas City Chiefs, what's the top matchup for you guys?
Really quick, I'm going to throw it to Ryan in just a second. I just want to say something on Chris Jones. I'm curious to see how they deploy him in this game because I think you're right. Tunsil has played fantastic. But one of the things Kansas City has really done is they've thrown Chris Jones out of defensive end in their NASCAR package. I'm wondering how that gets employed against the Texans. But he has been a wrecker inside. Ryan, what is your matchup you're looking for?
Yeah, I think Kenyon Green is probably going to face the brunt of Chris Jones. And I'm sorry, Kenyon. He's one of my guys from last season, but I'm not looking forward to that. My question is going to be the Chiefs secondary is starting at least 2 rookies, maybe more than that by the time we get around to game time. So it's been a struggle for them as of late. Clearly, with the last 2 receiving cores, this one doesn't look quite as menacing to me. I don't know who's going to be available, though. And Chris Moore and Amari Rodgers had decent games last week. I will give them credit. I want to know, is that matchup one that the Chiefs rookies are more evenly matched in? Is it going to be somebody else coming back for this particular game, John? Like, what does the Chiefs secondary have to look out for? Because that's the matchup I want to see.
Man, honestly, there isn't a guy that I would just barely say, hey, you really need to look out for this guy offensively for Houston. It does play because I'm saying it because of quarterback inefficiencies and inconsistencies. Nico Collins is hopeful for this upcoming Sunday, so Houston will get one of their top 2 options back. We'll say this. I think that this is a game where the tight ends for Houston can get involved offensively. Jordan Akins, originally drafted Houston Texans, was released last year, came back this year. He has been the best tight end for the Houston Texans this season. I'm not saying much, but he's been fairly impressive given his journey back to Houston and why he's back here in town now. And there's been games where you guys have allowed, some big moments versus tight ends this year. Am I right?
Yeah. That happens to be like a 17-year-long streak.
So, 17 years sounds about right, actually, is the way I'm thinking about it right now.
I'm looking at the Buccaneers, 80 yards, the 49ers tight ends, 98 yards. When I look at the Titans tight end, 82 yards there, a couple of touchdowns this season allowed to tight ends. This offense is very vanilla, and I mean bluebell vanilla. You're not going to get much out of it, but what helps this offense out has been the productivity of Jordan Akins. It has been Houston trying to find ways to get the tight ends involved in the offense. And so when I look at this team overall going up against the Chiefs, I do think that schematically the tight ends should be considered in the game coming up.
So you're telling me Brandon Cooks is not going to be in the mix? Maybe Nico. They both missed on Wednesday, right?
Yeah, Cooks. I don't foresee Cooks playing for the rest of the year. That relationship has soured. He came back and played for him one more game, step on that field for the Houston Texans. I think in the offseason he'll be traded. So he won't be a threat. Chris Moore, a big game against the Dallas Cowboys, however, 10 catches, 100 yards, do well for the Houston Texans on Sunday as well. When I look at options in terms of the ball out, I look at a Chris Moore to step up as he has whenever Cooks and Collins hasn't been in the lineup. And I can see this being a game for Houston Texans tight end to really get involved and make some plays here and there.
Yeah, and I'm really curious to see how that all plays, how all that plays into all of this, because you're sitting here and you're looking at this, and the Texans tight ends are going to be something that I think you have to worry about if you're Kansas City, mainly because that is probably going to be the focal point. I feel good about the wide receivers matched up against the Chiefs secondary. At least that's the way I look at it right now, especially without Brandon Cooks and Nico Collins coming off an injury. I think that's going to be tough for them. The one matchup that I'm really curious about, and it's mainly because Kansas City has shown that they can be effective on offense, except for times when Mahomes is getting pressured. So the question I have is Jerry Hughes going to show up? Is he going to have a day against a guy like Orlando Brown or even against Andrew Wiley or the Texans pass rushers going to get after the QB? Because that's going to make things harder.
Yeah, I think this is a game possibly happen. Not only with Jerry Hughes, who has had age, but we've seen Ogbo Okoronkwo sign him in the offseason from the LA Rams. He's been able to be effective as a pass rusher the last couple of games, but I think Malik Collins is one of the guys I'm looking forward to seeing this. I mean, he's got hot over the last couple of weeks, create pressure, not only in terms of getting after the quarterback, but he's also been very effective in terms of just making it harder for teams to kind of run on Houston, which has been an issue the entire year, which kind of leaves you guys in terms of we on the offensive line, defensive line, but how confident are you in the run game right now in case this offense for Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes can slow down a little bit and they can hand it off? Confident in their running game? Because I haven't watched much of the Chiefs to know that answer.
They'd love to know the answer too, because it's up and down.
Ryan would definitely love to know that answer. I guarantee you, Ryan wants to know that answer.
Ryan, just run the ball
right into Ryan's hand.
I would like to know that it's consistent. I don't know that it's going to be. They have fits and starts. They feel like they can get something done. They're generally efficient running the ball, but situationally they give up on it at times. Obviously, overall, when you have Mahomes touching the ball every down, you give up on it a little bit more. So it's really a question. They've gotten better the last, 6 weeks. They ran it out to finish the game against the Broncos. It was very, very vanilla, so there's going to be opportunity there. But it does bring it back to that offensive line, defensive line. And old Okoronkwo, I used to call him Double Lot because I couldn't pronounce his name very well when he was coming out in the draft. I've been waiting for him to show up, and I'm a little concerned about that pass rush matchup against what I think they're going to probably throw him over on Wiley and see what he can do.
It's going to be something that's going to be
it's good to see him come on late like that.
Yeah. It's going to be a lot of fun to see how that plays into this game and how these teams match up. When we get back, we're going to give you our predictions for this game and what we are expecting. But right now, we need to tell you about our friends over at BetOnline.
BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting information, stats, news, and analysis this season. Get all of the latest odds, trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season, basketball, World Cup. We've got it all over at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, well, you can find those over at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get all of your betting information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more, because BetOnline is where the game starts. And all sports are driving sober. It can happen easily. A few drinks become a few too many, and it's time to go. And you think about calling for a ride home. What's the worst can happen? May go across your head. That can be a thought. You get pulled over, maybe. You lose your license. You total your car. Even worse, a fatality. Drive sober, or don't get pulled over.
All right, so we need to jump back in and give you our predictions for this game. I'm really looking forward to it because I like seeing Kansas City play against teams they don't really get a chance to play against, and this is going to be one of those matchups with the Houston Texans. I haven't played them a lot since the playoff game a couple of years ago. John, I've given you the lead on all these, so I'll let you go ahead and give us your prediction first.
Before I do that, guys, the last time we brought up the playoffs, right? I just want to let you guys know that I blame the Kansas City Chiefs for the downfall of this franchise. I forgot what down it was, but Houston was still up 24-0. And was that the Tyreek Hill touchdown? But in that game, you guys won that game and went on to the Super Bowl.
Travis Kelce had 3 of them.
It's been a trickle effect. Thank you. All right. Okay. Yeah, and we had who I used to call tweet through it, Lonnie Johnson, who spent some time in Kansas City. Lonnie Johnson had him, and that that was days where you just feel like, if I'm Travis Kelce, I worked for free today because I didn't get nothing. It's just I didn't break a sweat. But since that moment, this franchise has crumbled from the bottom. I rarely see things crumble from the bottom and the top at the same time, and it meets in the middle. That's what's been going on in Houston. So thank you guys, and I hope you feel good about yourself over in Kansas City, you Chiefs fans. But predictions coming into this game, no Dameon Pierce, which is a huge hit for this team. No Pierce. You still have up and downs at the quarterback position. And let's face it, this is still Patrick Mahomes. And I think certain quarterbacks own certain teams. And I think this is one of those games where Patrick Mahomes comes out firing. I think for the entire year, especially starting the year off, Patrick Mahomes has been disrespected. The last couple of weeks, in terms of media narratives, of course, I think that he's been slighted a little bit. I think this is one of those games where, as a quarterback, you kind of circle to get back on track, kind of limit some of those turnovers he's been having. It may get ugly for Houston. I don't necessarily want to put a score on this one, but it may get ugly for Houston. But I definitely see the Kansas City Chiefs winning this game. I do think the game will get pulled away from in the second half. They'll try to be competitive in the first defensively.
Ryan, what do you got?
Well, first, I am relieved because I know magically calf injuries can clear up when you get to play a primetime team and you want to show off for who might come trading for you. So I'm glad Brandon Cooks didn't magically heal right yet.
That has had a tendency to happen with Kansas City
right?
Teams get season playing. So.
It does. So I'm a little relieved of that because I think that's a matchup that these rookies on the Chiefs secondary are going to have a little bit of trouble with. Secondly, I think in the reverse, there's a relief, I think, in given a 3-interception game last week for Patrick Mahomes, that Derek Stingley isn't going to be out there. At least he didn't practice today. Does he make it back? Again, people generally raise their game when they play this team, so who knows? No. I'll take that as a plus sign. I think you want him healthy. I don't know the risk of injury to him, but I thought it was a possibility. Hopefully we'll see what happens. At the end of the day, I think that offense has to run around the run game, and now there's multiple quarterbacks involved. I think this is going to be a little bit dark for the Texans. The Chiefs should probably pull this away by multiple scores. I don't know if they have to play all the way to 30, but I do think the Texans showed a lot of fight last week against the Dallas Cowboys. You can ask anybody in Dallas, and then they'll be a little bit frustrated with it. So I do think they get into the teens. Right now, I'm going to call it 28-13, and that'll be a game. But I will say there's going to be fight.
Yeah, and like I said, I think it's in this first half. I'm sorry, Chris. I think it's going to be in that first half. Shout out to Jalen Petrie, by the way, our rookie who's been phenomenal.
Yep. He's been playing really well. And I agree, Ryan. I think that there is going to be a fight. And I do think that this Texans team is going to show up and they're going to try, at least in the first half to really give it to Kansas to have a chance in this game. I look at the rosters and I look at Kansas City coming back and being almost healthy. And like you said from the start, John, this is a banged up Texans team, and there is a lot of questions on the Texans team, even without some of the injuries that they have, dealing without having Dameon Pierce and looking at your passing attack and the offense. I agree. I think it could be in the teens. But we saw last week a very, very bad offense in Denver score a lot of points against Kansas City's defense. So it's possible that it's more than the teens. I hope that I'm wrong in that regard. But I think Kansas City could easily put up over 30 points, mainly because I think that this is a game that they want to get right. They want to use the weapons that they have. If McCole Hardman and Kadarius Toney are back, that opens up the offense a lot more to things that they haven't been able to do the past several weeks. I'm looking at this game thinking maybe 35-17 Kansas City. That is going to be it for us today. Thank you all for listening. John, thank you so much for coming on. Tell people where they can find you.
Oh, man, you can find me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. And when you look that profile up, it's going to have Tone Targaryen. I'm a Targaryen, man. So shout out to my Game of Thrones and House of Dragon lovers out there. And make sure you follow us on Twitter at Locked On Texans and subscribe, like, comment, tell your grandma to put us on the prayer list so they can pray for more subscribers on YouTube under the name Locked On Texans.
Yeah, and you could do the same for Locked On Chiefs. We would appreciate that as well. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Go give us some reviews. Give us comments on YouTube. We love those as well. Ryan, anything else you would like to add?
let's have a clean game, come out fighting, and let's see what happens.
And hopefully no more injuries. I just want to put that out there. So that's going to be it for us today. Thank you all for listening. We do appreciate it, and we will talk to you tomorrow.